Georgia, together with its two other neighbors, Armenia and Azerbaijan, are part of this great game that has been going on for centuries, actually, between Britain and Russia, and between the United States and Russia in the last 30 years. This is contested territory. These are borderlands. These are places where the United States has actively tried to intervene, specifically in Georgia, to expand NATO. So this is part of the plan that includes Ukraine to surround Russia in the Black Sea region with NATO. This is Brzezinski's plan from the 1990s, riffing off of Lord Palmerston's plan in the 1850s. And Georgia became part of that game. And it has been a deadly game because it involved one hot war between Russia and Georgia in 2008 and a continuing very tense situation in recent years. So you have this region, the South Caucasus. These are the small countries, very historic. Each, if you look at Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, with civilizations that go back thousands of years. Georgia, arguably 10,000 years of recognizable civilization that have been contested zones, actually, between east and west, north and south for thousands of years. They are countries, a region at the crossroads of East and West, at the crossroads of Christianity and Islam. Within the region itself, contested territory between three great imperial powers of the last 600 years of history, the Ottoman Turks, the Iranians, and the Russians. And so those three empires, even without the United States and Britain, have been fighting among themselves and contesting this territory. But after 1991, and even during the Cold War, I would say, it was viewed as the soft underbelly of the Soviet Union or the soft underbelly of Russia, and therefore a place where the CIA could meddle, a place where the American deep state could meddle, a place where American so-called non-governmental organizations, which are very much governmental organizations, part of the U.S. deep state, could try to intervene and swing politics. And Georgia got caught completely in that because Georgia was one of the locations where the United States helped to arrange the overthrow of a government, the Rose Revolution of 2004, which overthrew Shevardnadze and installed a Western favorite, Saakashvili, backed by George Soros personally and backed by U.S. money personally. And he was the stooge, I would say, to promote the entry of NATO and the EU into the region. Now, one thing about the EU being there also, this region, if you ask a geographer, is not in Europe. These are countries south of the Great Caucasus Mountains. The crest line of the Caucasus Mountains is the divide between Europe to the north, that's Russia, and Asia to the south. So these aren't even geographically part of Europe. But the European Union, in this neocon US-promoted age, wanted to take territory as NATO expands. So they went side by side, as in Ukraine as well. And Saakashvili became the instrument for that. And in 2008, at this infamous NATO Bucharest summit, which was I would say, in a way, a turning point when Europe fell completely into line with U.S. neoconservatism, that Georgia and Ukraine together at that NATO summit were invited into NATO. That was, I think, the turning point from cold to hot war that ensued. And in the case of Georgia, Saakashvili, I'll tell you one anecdote, but he took this invitation to NATO as also the invitation to attack a breakaway territory and try to reclaim it for Georgia, thinking that NATO has his back and the United States has his back, and he lost a war with Russia in 2008. He ended up in many weird adventures of politics throughout the region, including in Ukraine, and very bizarre guy. But in any event, this thrust Georgia into the front line of the Russia-U.S. confrontation, and it's been there until basically now. The governing party, the Georgia Dream, which you will know more about and be more up to date than I am, having just visited, is trying to extricate Georgia from all of this great game, because this great game is not conducive to peace, to security, or to economic development. It is a disaster. It is being used as a pawn of somebody else, and in this case, a pawn of the United States. And I just wanted to tell you an anecdote. We discuss all the time how Ukraine became a pawn of the United States and has been devastated and bloodied and degraded and divided because of this neocon Palmerston idea of grabbing Ukraine for NATO and for the West and so forth. In 2008, as this was brewing, this NATO enlargement, Saakashvili actually came to New York, came to the Council on Foreign Relations in New York City in April or May 2008. And I was curious, so I thought I'd go over and listen to him. So I walked across Central Park and went to hear him speak. And it was incredible. We are part of Europe. We've always been part of Europe. We will be part of NATO. We will be part of the European Union. We are the most European country. I don't know, maybe 2 or 4 weeks later that the war broke out and that indeed Saakashvili was smashed as a result. But I had that very personal presence of this insane arrogance that the United States gives these countries. They think the U.S. has their back. Now we can do anything. We'll defeat Russia. We can put it in their face. And this is the mindset that has led us to disaster all over the region. But that's a very long-winded answer to your question. But the core of the issue is for Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, they've been caught in a U.S. game from the 1990s, partly to weaken Russia, partly to grab oil resources in the Caspian region, partly to build a Caspian Black Sea pipeline that would go around Russia. In other words, great game stuff with some of the big names of the neocon world involved from the start. Brzezinski, always around, Scowcroft, Kissinger, amazing, playing games in this region, thinking that this was part of the post-1991 process of further weakening or deconstructing or decolonizing Russia. And these three little wonderful, amazing, historic countries have gotten caught in the middle of it, and they're trying to extricate themselves from it. And Europe continues to meddle nonstop. The U.S. has tried, but I don't think, I hope that Trump has no interest in this. So maybe they actually have a chance on their own for some economic development. Bottom line, and final point, I should say, my recommendation to them is look at your map, look at your geography, look at your neighborhood. That's how you do economics to start. You have neighbors. You trade with your neighbors. You have investments with your neighbors. You have infrastructure with your neighbors. The three neighbors are three big powers, Russia, Turkey, and Iran, three historic civilizations. They actually are getting along reasonably well right now, thank you. And that gives a chance for the three South Caucasus countries, which really have a shared destiny as well, to say, look, we can be prosperous within this region by having decent relations with all three sides. The United States is not our issue. The EU is not our issue, but Russia, Iran, Turkey, the Middle East, a north-south trade and infrastructure corridor, an east-west trade corridor, that's our future. And we can be prosperous service centers, touristic centers, communication, and digital hubs. We can have a very nice future if it's peaceful in our region.